Hello everyone, just wanted to check in. It's been a while since I made a video, so I wanted to just cover off the potential changes in racetracks coming up over the next number of years, and also look back a little bit at the tracks of the past, and to get your opinion on whether you think some of those tracks should perhaps make a reappearance. So over the last number of years, you've probably seen that the movement in F1 is to tracks that are in outside of Europe or on other parts of the world, particularly places that have got money. So the US obviously being one, Saudi Arabia being a more recent addition, and I think this is a trend that's going to continue. So really, money talks, and it definitely talks in Formula One. But it seems to me that it's a bit of a shame that we've sort of lost some of the great tracks of the past, and some of those great tracks are staying, but maybe not necessarily going to be on the schedule every year. Spa, for example, and it's interesting because there's some momentum now for F1 to return to certain places. South Korea being one. Toto Wolff recently pushing for it, and Mercedes, I believe, planning to have some sort of a show there in the near future as well. So we've also got the return of, or not the return, sorry, but the introduction of Madrid next year, which I think there's a bit of scepticism as to whether that's going to be an interesting track or not, but obviously we'll find out in due course. But I wonder what your thoughts are. I mean, I certainly think that if we look in more recent times, some of the tracks that we've lost that have I think were particularly interesting, tracks like Turkey, Malaysia. Obviously, we've had the loss of the German Grand Prix, which just seems a travesty, really, when you think perhaps after or alongside the UK, what are the countries in Europe that are really obsessed with motorsport? You definitely think that Germany was one of those, and yet they don't have a Formula One track. Now Austria has a Formula One track, and you could argue, well, it's only around the corner, so does it matter? No, maybe it doesn't. And actually, Austria, Spielberg is actually one of my favourite tracks, even though it's a relatively less taxing track, shall we say, because there's lots of long straights in it. But the loss of tracks like Turkey and Malaysia particularly, I think South Korea less so. I always remember watching the South Korea Grand Prix on a rain. It seemed to be always a wet Sunday morning, or wet there in South Korea, and usually wet where I was watching it as well, and not finding it particularly exciting. But it seems like some of the best tracks have disappeared and are possibly not going to come back. And as a replacement, there's this trend towards countries that have got the most money, but B towards those tracks that seem to be basically they're road tracks, or they're roads that have been converted into race tracks temporarily, which I think some of the road tracks are better than others. I mean, Monaco is obviously the worst example of a road track. You can't overtake, nothing really happens, it's just a procession. But if you look at Azerbaijan, I think they've done it quite well. I actually quite like the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. But with the exception, I think, of this season's race, Miami is probably an example of a track that's not very exciting. Las Vegas, I would argue, is the same as well. So I wonder what you as F1 fans think about the sort of change in racetrack configurations over the last number of years, and what tracks would you like to see come back out of all the ones that have disappeared? Do you want to see South Korea come back, like Toto Wolff's pushing for? What about the Valencia Grand Prix? Although the track there is kind of like it's a road track again, but it's kind of disappeared now. Are there any tracks that you'd like to see that have disappeared that perhaps you'd like to see come back on the grid? And which ones should be almost like sacrosanct? So, I'd say Spa should be there every season. I'd say a German Grand Prix, whether it's Hockenheim or elsewhere, I would argue probably should be on the schedule every year, regardless of whether it pays the most money. And this is what I worry about, is that over time people will either get used to, I would argue, not as exciting tracks, or that actually people will lose interest, particularly perhaps the older generation of F1 fans who are used to those more exciting classic tracks that we had of yesteryear. Personally, I would like to see a bigger core of European tracks, and where it's possible to have tracks in new countries, it not be dictated by how glamorous it looks, but actually how exciting the race is going to be. So, let's see what the Mad Ring in Madrid's going to look like next year. But the initial sort of feedback that I've heard from different commentators is that it possibly isn't going to be the most exciting track in the world. And that what are we doing here? I thought the whole point of watching Formula One was to actually watch races on tracks that are exciting, where there's the possibility of overtaking, where there is a bit of jeopardy in some of the corners that drivers have to go into. And that leads me on to another thing as well. When I was a Formula One fan as a kid, there was nothing more upsetting than watching particularly if it was one of your favourite drivers, maybe not if it wasn't one of your favourite drivers, going into a gravel path and just getting stuck, getting beached. But when I watch Formula One now, I don't know about you, but all I see is cars going off limits. Now I know they've been more strict about the going off limits in recent times, which is good. But if you do go off the track, if you do make a mistake or you do overdo it, no problem. Just go onto the asphalt, which is off the track. Maybe let the other cars go past again, and off you go. Now, it's great that we have as many cars as possible racing, but racing should really be at the absolute pinnacle of any motorsport. Formula One should be, sorry. And so I would argue that you want to make sure that those drivers that can handle the tracks the best are the ones that finish the race as well. So I think I think Formula One's in a good place. I think that next season's exciting, but I do think it's a shame that some of the sort of more classic tracks of the past are either being faded out or are disappearing completely and being replaced with, I would say, fairly bland, more sort of look how cool it looks rather than look how cool it is to watch racing on it. And I'd be interested to hear what your opinion is. So I'll wait for the comments below. If you have any opinions at all, please feel free to put them in. And let's see what happens over the next number of years. But ultimately, you the fans should have some say in what Formula One looks like in the future. I'm not so sure that is the case anymore, but I think we all just want to see really exciting racing on challenging tracks where there's an opportunity for jeopardy and there's an opportunity for mistakes, which sometimes go punished rather than unpunished, which is what it seems to be today. So I'm going to call it a day at that point. If you heard any coughing and spluttering in the background, it's my dog. Apologies for that. He's not very well, and hence me stroking him every 2 seconds just to try and calm him down. And I look forward to your comments. And yeah, do you want to see the Formula One return to South Korea? I'd much rather see it come back to Turkey on that anti-clockwise track, or Malaysia. These were good races for me, and I think it's about time that we stuck our hands up and said this is what we want, and try and get F1 to engage a little bit more. Anyway, I'll leave it at that for today. I promise, I said this last time, but I promise I'll be in touch more often. I hope you're enjoying the videos. If you have any comments, please feel free to share them, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, bye.